Indian polity. The Pitt's India Act of 1784. The Pitt's India Act of 1784, formerly known as the East India Company Act 1784, was an important piece of legislation passed by the British Parliament that regulated the affairs of the East India Company in India. The Act was named after its sponsor, British Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger. The main purpose of the Act was to rectify the defect in the management and administration of the East India Company and to establish greater control over its activities in India. Here are the key provisions and details of the Pitt's India Act of 1784. Dual control. The Act introduced a system of dual control over the affairs of the East India Company. It established two new bodies, the Board of Control and the Court of Directors. The Court of Directors consisted of the existing directors of the East India Company, while the Board of Control was a governmental body appointed by the British Crown. The Board of Control had the power to supervise and direct the company's operations in India, while the Court of Directors continued to manage the company's commercial activities. Appointment of Governor General. The Act created the office of the Governor General of Bengal, who would be appointed by the Crown. The Governor General had authority over all the presidencies of British India, which included Bengal, Madras, and Bombay. This move aimed to centralize power and establish a unified administration in India. Council of Governor General. The Governor General was to be assisted by a council consisting of 4 members. The Act specified that the Governor General would have a casting vote, which means that in case of the tie in voting, the Governor General's vote would be decisive. Limited powers of the Governor General. The Act imposed certain limitations on the powers of the Governor General. Important matters such as the declaration of war, conclusion of peace, or making treaties with Indian princes required the prior approval of the Board of Control in London. Control over companies' territories. The Act gave the Governor General the authority to have control over the territories, revenues, and forces of the East India Company. The Governor General was authorized to issue orders to the governors of other presidencies. Regulation of companies' trade. The Act maintained the company's monopoly over trade with India but introduced some regulations. The Court of Directors was given powers to make regulations for the company's commercial activities, subject to the approval of the Board of Control. Creation of Indian Civil Service. The Act established the Indian Civil Service, which was responsible for the recruitment and appointment of civil servants in India. The recruitment process was to be conducted through competitive examinations. Financial control. The Act introduced mechanisms for greater financial control over the East India Company. It required the company to present detailed accounts of its revenue, expenditure, and debts to the Board of Control. The Pitt's India Act of 1784 marked a significant shift in the British government's involvement in the affairs of the East India Company. It aimed to address the issues of corruption, mismanagement, and lack of accountability within the company while providing the British government with greater control over the company's operations in India. The Act laid the groundwork for subsequent reforms in the governance of British India, leading to further changes in the following decades. Thank you.